Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amy Major and I'm MBA Recruitment Manager here at Said Business School. My role here is that I am part of our MBA recruiting team, and my role also forms part of the admissions committee. So thank you for signing in this afternoon, wherever you may be. Obviously appreciate this may be the morning or the evening for some people dialed in. So I'd also like to apologise for my rather croaky voice. I'm blaming this on the new MBA cohort that has arrived, and as one student put that to me at lunchtime, most of our students have probably travelled through most airports across the globe over the last week. So I hope you enjoy the session. As I mentioned in the notes, in the chat actually, please do send through questions as you think of those. I will, however, probably keep most of the questions until the end, and we'll try to group those together. What I would say is please try to keep your questions as clear and concise as possible. And if it's a very personal inquiry, I will direct you to the MBA recruitment inbox where you can send through your inquiry, and then we can follow up online. So again, thank you for joining us. This afternoon, we're going to really sort of cover off quite a wide variety of topics. So everything from sort of the curriculum of the programme here on the MBA through to how to apply, application requirements, and also really trying to bring the sort of experience of the Oxford MBA to you via a virtual experience. So quite a bit of information. Obviously, there's many other ways to engage beyond this webinar where you will get specific information on specific topics. So we do have a series of application tips webinars, also scholarship webinars, and now our new cohort that I mentioned have just arrived. We'll also be introducing our student experience panel webinars. We've also already had a couple of webinars this summer, so there are a couple of other recordings available that we can share. So I hope you enjoy the session. I can already see some questions coming through, but I'm just going to launch into the presentation. So I'm sure this is probably the image that you think of when you Google image Oxford University. This is probably one of the images that you see. The reason I show this to you is because the fact that we are a business school within a wider university is what really could make this a really unique experience for you. And it's something that we think makes it a standout experience as an MBA here at Said. The experience of the wider university is completely linked to your experience as an MBA. The business school is very young, it's 22 years old, and it's cutting edge, but it's embedded in something that has a legacy that under debate is somewhere around the 800-year mark. What this means as a student on the MBA is that our approach is very interdisciplinary. It's set on the backdrop of something much larger, a wider conversation, a wider debate, and in turn attracts a community and a cohort of very diverse students. I'll come on in a bit more detail as to how that affects your experience in terms of your membership to an Oxford college and the time outside of the MBA lectures. So this is the business school. Not so much an image you think of when you think of Oxford. It's a great purpose-built facility, and it's located right next to the Oxford train station. So it's actually only 1 hour from London. So you can get a very quick train into London. So from a sort of careers networking perspective, obviously across London, this is really important for our students. And it's just a great place to study. I think it's great to have the experience of the colleges and the dining halls and the history and the legacy of that wider university, but to have this purpose-built business school in which you'll be spending your time and having all of your lectures is really sort of key to the experience. So how I would describe that is that the business school and this campus building you see here is where you'll be spending your day. So think of that as your sort of your workplace. Anything you do with the MBA will happen on the Said campus, and then anything outside could happen within your college. So be that formal dinners, sporting activities, cultural, any sort of clubs or networks. But we do also have a lot of networks and clubs within the business school itself. So here we have just a really short quote from our MBA programme director, Ian Rogan. And for me, this underpins what is front and centre when we think about the kind of students we are attracting and the aims that we have here at Said. So we are looking to create that next generation of responsible leaders. We're doing that through a very broad curriculum. So it's a broad business curriculum that you then, as you move throughout the year, really start to sort of develop your focuses. Perhaps you take specific tracks in order to really sort of focus your mind on certain areas and to really sort of delve deep into particular sort of skill sets or areas of business that you maybe haven't worked on in the past. Above all, with this focus of creating a purposeful career. So focusing very much on, with an emphasis on responsible business, with an ethics first approach, perhaps with an entrepreneurial stance. So that doesn't mean you need to be an entrepreneur, but are you acting entrepreneurially if you're working inside an organization as well? So moving on to the curriculum, obviously on our website you can navigate to the full list of elective courses and the list of the 8 core courses. I'm going to go on to in the next slide as to how the curriculum really plays out in terms of the schedule over the year. But I mentioned earlier on that we take a very interdisciplinary approach to how you learn at Said and at Oxford. So we've got 8 core courses. So we start off the year really not giving you as much choice around how you spend your time. The purpose being that this is a 1-year intense program. So therefore, we very much want to get those core courses completed so that you can move on to the electives and the integrated modules where you obviously are really sort of focusing on your future and where you want to sort of invest your time and your skills. So we then have the over 40 elective courses which you can choose from. And this is where you obviously then move into much smaller classroom groups as well. The integrated modules, so these being global rules of the game, entrepreneurship, global rules of the game, and also responsible business. So these really, as I said, underpin what is front and centre in the MBA programme. You then have a whole host of co-curricular activities, and these could be things that you might like to note down and research in more detail. So our finance lab, our social impact lab, and also our consulting development programme. We also focus very much on applied learning here. So taking what you have learned in that classroom learning setting and taking it into group projects. Some of you through your research may have heard about the entrepreneurship project and also the GoTo platform. I've noticed a couple of questions coming through regarding GoTo. So that's our Global Opportunities and Threats Oxford project. I will move on to that in the next slide. Okay, so here you can really sort of see the intensity of the course schedule. So as I said, very much starting with those core courses, moving on to the electives. So you can see that by the Hilary and Trinity term in Oxford language, you are really focusing very much on the electives and also the applied learning projects. So to go into those applied learning projects in a little bit more detail. So for the GoTo project, every year we are taking a theme, something that is perhaps really sort of affecting the world at large. So this year the topic is the future of energy. Last year it was the future of healthcare. The year before, the future of the workplace. There seems to be a theme there with the future of. However, previously we've also focused on big data and we focused on water scarcity. So you are put into a team of 5, and in that team of 5 you look to come up with a model that in some way will tackle a problem under that theme. So it's a really great opportunity to immerse yourself in the wider university, and perhaps you could reach out to policymakers, researchers, other postgraduate students, networks, centres of excellence, and people that may be able to help you and assist you with your project throughout the wider university. In the Trinity term, we then have the entrepreneurship project. And for the entrepreneurship project, you get to choose the team in which you work. And for this project, you are effectively looking to build a business plan. So this is, for some students, a great opportunity to use that project as a test bed for something that you're looking to maybe launch in the real world post MBA, or perhaps in a few years' time, or perhaps you're already an entrepreneur and you want to look at other routes of how you diversify your startup, or maybe how you take your startup that you already have to the next level. And the entrepreneurship project also links in with our Oxford Seed Fund, and it's obviously where some students then use to carry on their opportunity potentially within the Foundry. The Oxford Foundry is our new incubator accelerator, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the experience. But as you can see, the course schedule, it's an intense program. And so therefore, you're going to be very busy, but there is a lot going on outside of this course curriculum, which you can also get involved in the wider university. So moving on to some employment outcomes from our most recent cohort. So this is the report from our cohort that finished the class in 2017. Obviously, our 2018 class have only just finished, so we'll obviously be completing that employment report in a few months' time. But from our cohort of 2017, as you can see, 91% of our graduates had received a job offer within 3 months of graduating. And I think, you know, this presentation is not about comparing us to our competition. However, obviously, we're very much aware that we are in a competitive marketplace and there are many options out there for MBA. However, I do believe this stat is fairly high in terms of when we compare ourselves to other European one-year MBAs. Obviously, you can see that after graduation, our students are finding roles across the globe. So I think what's great about this is because the cohort is so diverse, we don't have our students looking all for work in any one country, albeit there are certainly locations which are very popular. So London and New York and some of the sort of key Asia hubs, certainly worth bearing in mind to be open on that, and employers are definitely keen to receive applications from people that are open to open to location. Of course, a lot of the larger companies will have many global hubs, so the ability for you to maybe like rotate or show an openness to moving to a new location initially is definitely something well received. You'll also see that along with the location, the industry in which people are finding employment is also incredibly diverse. And this is down to the fact that we attract a very, very diverse cohort in terms of the backgrounds that people come from and the roles in which they go into. Obviously, you can see sort of some concentrations there in consulting and finance. And certainly Saeed has developed a strong reputation when we speak about impact. But you can see that beyond that, technology is a very, very fast growing sector, as I'm sure we all know. But definitely some great opportunities within the wider sort of global industry sectors, as we would call it. So moving on to our career development centre, this is a team of about 20 people. It splits into 4 sector areas, so we do sort of crudely cut that down into those 4 sectors. And a lot of the activities that they are running are the same across those 4 sectors, albeit there are workshops and boot camps and programs and labs that will be very industry specific. We start the career development engagement because we are a one-year programme. We start that quite early, so we'll be starting that in June. So obviously another reason to apply sort of early to the programme, and I'll come on to reasons to apply early to an MBA. But by June time, we're starting to engage with you as a cohort via a lot of online webinars, virtual sessions, really to sort of make sure that by the time you come to campus, if you do have specific companies in mind, if you've got a specific industry track in mind, that you already potentially have a CV that looks in good shape to be putting forward to companies, that you already have a sense of what is going to be required of you. You have a sense of what is involved in applying to some of these organisations. And you can see the sort of support we provide. So everything from employers coming to campus through to coaching support, through to we have a whole host of industry advisors that we work with. So they are on top of the team of 20 that we have here on site. And we also will offer you mock interviews as well. Something I would add that when you come on, I talked about when your pre-arrival to campus. This week, our current cohort are in their second week of what we call our launch orientation program, and they are rotating through a variety of different sessions over the course of this week. So the second week of your MBA here in Oxford will be completely dedicated to working with the Careers Centre. So moving on, these are companies that have hired Oxford MBA graduates. If you navigate to our MBA pages on the website, you will be able to download a copy of our employment report. So I'm sure some of these are many of the names that some people may already work for or have on their sort of wish list, really. So, and this could vary from, so some of these employers you see here, these may be employers with structured hiring MBA programs, or some of these may be where we have some alumni connections, but their MBA hiring is less structured and is more where they're looking for an experienced hire. Some of these employers will also take students on internships from Oxford Said as well. So I talked about our cohort being really diverse. So I'm going to really sort of come on to now sort of what we look for and the type of students that we have. So you'll see it's a really diverse cohort. I think if you're looking to take yourself away from maybe working with a certain type of people or people who are similar to you, then Oxford Said could be a great experience for you. So you're going to find yourself in a class cohort of anywhere between 310 to 340 students. We've had this cohort size for about 3 years now. We have no intention of growing that, and it grew from around 240 only 3 years ago. We've actually just welcomed 62 nationalities into the cohort last week. So obviously we'll shortly be updating with our new cohort stats as well. But many of these stats tend to sort of stay the same sort of year on year, and it's not really by design. We always have new nationalities joining. We have a common room in which we have flags which we represent every country that we've had on the programme for the last 3 years. This year we have 25 countries from which we only have one person, so that will give you a flavour for how diverse that classroom is. And so when you're if you think back to the curriculum that I showed you, when you're in those core courses that we saw in the red text, you're going to be in a group of 80 students. So we break the cohort into 4 groups, and you're also going to have a study group. And so always by design, your study group will likely be five people with 5 very different backgrounds and from 5 different corners of the world. And here you can really sort of see the diversity across the globe. So I would say to anybody, if you're working in finance, probably never will you find yourself in a classroom learning finance, but around people from so many different parts of the world with different perspectives about maybe how something that you're experienced in is handled or conducted in another very, very different country. So that's worth thinking about. Obviously, when you do your bachelor and undergrad, maybe you're studying finance or you're studying law and you're around other lawyers or you're around other financiers. Here at Said, you find yourself working on projects, working on assignments, and being challenged by people from all across the world. So I'm going to come on to sort of the experience, which I did touch on at the beginning. So in terms of colleges, so this is something that we do give you a lot more information about as you move throughout the process, but I'm going to try and simply explain how this works. So once you have been admitted to the business school, you then select one of the Oxford colleges, and your file is sent to that college. It's one good reason to apply early because every college will put a cap on the number of MBAs that they will admit, and therefore if you have a specific wish for one of the generally sort of older colleges, they will have a firm cap on the number of MBAs that they will take, and therefore applying in an earlier round is definitely recommended. There are two options for accommodation. There is accommodation within maybe the four walls of one of these college buildings. But if you think most of these buildings are what we would call grade 1 listed in the UK, which means that we can't be changing and adapting these buildings. They are of historical significance from obviously both the sort of heritage and protection perspective. So a lot of the time students will be living in postgraduate accommodation that might be 5 to 10 minutes away from the actual college. That in no way diminishes your relationship with that college and your experience. But once you're a member of that college, you will regularly be invited to formal dinners. For most colleges, that will be several times a week. That doesn't mean you always have to be dressed in black tie, but it might be a fairly smart affair on a several weekly basis. And you'll get involved in clubs, societies, perhaps you're involved in sports for your college, and if you're particularly good at a sport, then you could get involved at an Oxford University level and earn what is called an Oxford Blue. So I'm sure you're all very much aware of the Oxford Cambridge boat race and other significant sporting events that take place here at Oxford. And here you can see what maybe that Oxford University student network looks like. This is a photo from last year at the Green Templeton College. Green Templeton is actually a very popular college for MBAs. It takes up to 60 to 70 of our MBA cohort every year. It's really only about 5 to 10 minutes from the business school, and it has a lot of accommodation on site and a very active postgraduate community. So it's a slightly newer college, built in the 1900s. That's very new for Oxford. But yeah, in terms of the experience, if you want to be around lots of MBAs, Green Templeton is a great place to choose. There are, however, lots of colleges that you may have heard of through just kind of word of mouth and certain movies and books. So the names like kind of Christchurch, Balliol, New College, the Queen's, Magdalen, these are colleges that are probably taking somewhere between 2 and 10 MBAs a year, and will fill up very quickly. So just to give you a flavour of the difference between the colleges. And I mentioned sports, so this really is about sports in terms of this image, but I think this really shows the power of the community. So every year, along with about 11 or 12 other European business schools, we take part in what is called the MBATs. So that's the MBA tournament. It's a mini Olympics for MBAs. And last year, 270 of our MBAs travelled to Paris to HEC Business School for the MBATs. Said also happens to have won the competition 2 years in a row. However, the competition has been running for 27 years, so we felt it was our time. But yeah, I think this just really shows, in an image, the diversity of the cohort we have here at Said, and what you can achieve when you come together as a team. So I talked a little bit about Oxford experience. So as a member of the university, so you are very much a student of the whole University of Oxford. You have a membership to what is called the Oxford Union. If you Google the Oxford Union, you'll see a very historic debating chamber. It's arguably where many of the world's leaders have honed their own debating skills. So that's a great venue, something that you get membership to for life as an Oxford student. It's where you'll see amazing leaders, celebrities, sporting personalities, business people, political leaders come to Oxford to speak. Here you can see this is one of our distinguished speaker events here at the business school, and that's Michael Bloomberg when he came to visit last year. Our first distinguished speaker event of this year is Dominic Barton from McKinsey, who also is on the board of Oxford Said, and that's taking place next week, and that's hosted by our dean. As I mentioned, there are a whole host of societies and clubs and sports that you can get involved with. We have what are called Oxford Business Networks here at the business school, which are student-led groups. So we have 5 industry-specific Oxford Business Networks that are then supported by groups and clubs. We also have 2 school-wide initiatives for women and diversity, and also our focus on Africa as a school. So coming on to application requirements. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm just taking intermittent sips of water in between. So application requirements, I can see lots of questions coming through here. So obviously I'm going to try and group these at the end. So the application requirements are all mandatory. We also ask that you have everything in place at the point of application. So you do need to have your GMAT, and you do need to have your references, and you do need to have taken your TOEFL or IELTS test if that is required, if you need to take that test. So I'm going to go into some of these in a little bit more detail. So for GMAT, we recommend a score of 650 or above to be competitive, and the average GMAT of our current cohort is 690. The range of our GMAT this year runs from 610 through to 790. So as you can see, there is quite a big range. We very much take a holistic approach to your application. And I would say that I would deem the academics as sort of the entry to the race. You do need to make sure that you have a solid mix there between your GMAT or GRE and your undergraduate score. So as a rule for your undergraduate degree, we are looking to convert your transcript into what would be a 3.5 GPA, equivalent of ideally, or in UK terms, a 2-1 or a first class degree. If you don't have a 3.5 degree, or you don't have a 2.1 or above, this doesn't necessarily rule you out. So let's just say you have a 3.0 GPA and you have a 2.2 degree, or you have what you would term as a solid grade, but not exceptional from anywhere else in the world, then this doesn't definitely rule you out, but you should perhaps look to focus a little bit more on gaining a GMAT or a GRE score that is more competitive than the average of 690. So that's my recommendation. Obviously, we can handle specifics, inquiries about where maybe the balance in your scores lie offline. On the other parts of the application, so we are looking for you to have professional experience. On average, our students will tend to have around 5 years experience. We are, however, looking for from 2 years upwards, and we have some hugely talented people coming to the programme with less experience than 5 years. So that doesn't rule you out. Equally, if you have 10 years experience, it could still be a great opportunity for you. There is a very clear distinction between our MBA and our executive MBA, in that for our executive MBA, we are looking for 15 plus years experience or close to. So I would say that if you have 10 years experience around that kind of mark, the MBA could still be very much the course for you to take. We're also obviously looking for 2 essays, and we ask these to be authentic and honest. Some of you may have seen our first essay question is to consider a statistic or trend that shocks you. Why is it important to you, and how would you change it for the better? We aren't looking for you to absolutely take a statistic from the Harvard Business Review or an academic journal. However, you can if you wish. It could be something more anecdotal, something that you've noticed, something that you've observed. But above anything else, just make it authentic, make it honest, and make it personal to you. Our second question is anything else that you'd like to let the admissions committee know about. This is a great opportunity to speak about something that we haven't seen maybe elsewhere in your application, or something that you see as interesting. Always keep front and centre of mind, am I letting the admissions committee get to know me? When we have all of these different elements of your application together, we really want to get a sense that we know you. One piece of advice I would give is to maybe show your application to somebody who hasn't done an MBA, hasn't applied to an MBA, but is somebody who knows you well, perhaps a member of your family or a friend, and really, if they know you well, they will tell you if they think you're being honest and open as to the person that you are, whether you're being brave and bold in your statements, and really showing your true self. It's not an academic application, it should be quite practical, and we should really feel like we have a sense of who you are when we read all of these documents all together. Moving on to the English language proficiency. So if your degree has been wholly instructed in English in what is considered an English speaking country, we have a list of which countries are considered English speaking on our website under MBA how to apply requirements. So you can see there if your degree has been instructed in English, and if you therefore have a waiver for the test. If your degree has not been instructed in what is considered an ordinarily English-speaking country, but it has been instructed in English, you can obtain a letter from your institution proving this, or quite often on your transcript, you will see a section where it will state that the degree has been instructed in English. Either of those will suffice. Unfortunately, if you don't fit into either of those 2 situations, you will need to take the TOEFL or the IELTS test, and you will need to submit that in line with the application deadline. Moving on to references, my advice here, so we ask for 2 references. We ask that at least one of those be a professional reference. For academic references, I would suggest that you use these if you know that person well. So there's certain countries or courses or regional trends as to, I think, places where you don't get that close to the academics in terms of a relationship that they would be able to provide a personal reference. So I really recommend that you choose people who know you well, that are your promoters, that are your real sort of advocators. So I talked about being authentic and honest, but perhaps here focusing on areas that can really strengthen your application. So we are looking for much more than just a good GMAT score, and obviously a good academic background. We're looking for you to demonstrate that you have a real awareness of why an MBA is the next step for you, and also why Oxford Said. I'm sure most of you on here will be applying to several schools, and it's important to feel that you are aligned to that school and that you genuinely align and could be a fit with that school. So the ability to explain through your application, and obviously subsequently then in interview, why you would be a fit to the school, I think can be quite crucial to the success. Leadership. You don't have to have leadership skills, but do you demonstrate leadership potential? So you can perhaps show this if you don't have leadership experience through projects where you've been given significant responsibility, where you've perhaps been placed outside of your comfort zone to take charge of something that you wouldn't have ordinarily been given within your role. Communication skills. You can show this through your essays, through how you write, through how you demonstrate your ability to really sort of work with others, which really ties in with teamwork. I think teamwork and communication are largely interlinked. Teamwork is really crucial to the MBA. The ability to work with others, the ability to appreciate people from often very different walks of life to yourself, with very different backgrounds, and everybody here with a very, very different agenda. But the strength of the community, when you all come together as those 320 people, is what will make any MBA cohort successful. So your ability to show that you are somebody who has an openness to new ideas and an openness to others, I think is really crucial to your application. And finally, your career vision. So do you have a plan? Do you know why you want to take a year out of your already successful career in order to undertake this programme? There are several questions in the application around career vision, and I do urge you to sort of think about those. Because we are a one-year programme, we are looking for you to hopefully have some idea of what you might like to do post-MBA, so that our Career Development Centre can really best help you when you arrive here on campus. So application stages, I mentioned a couple of times about applying early. We obviously have had our first application round already, and the second one is coming round fairly quickly. So my advice is to apply in stage 2 or stage 3 if you can. Reason being, firstly, we give out most of our scholarship funding in those rounds. So that's a really sort of key reason to apply. However, obviously, to be in contention for scholarship, you need to have a strong application. So don't rush an application for the sake of contention for scholarship if you don't think your application is what's going to be your best application that you can give, because that's sort of a catch-22 situation. You may end up then not being successful for scholarship. There were a couple of questions on scholarship, so I'm going to touch on those just now as I'm mentioning it in terms of the deadlines. So if you navigate to the MBA homepage on our website, you will be able to click through to scholarships. There are 2 routes to scholarship. There are scholarships through the business school. Any scholarships that require an extra essay or have an extra selection process will be marked with a star, and any that don't, you simply need to just tick in your application that you wish to be considered for the Saïd Business School scholarships. And in most cases, for those scholarships, we will let you know at the point of your offer if you have been successful for scholarship. For any of the other scholarships, you need to be aware of the timelines that will then play out after the application and outcome process. And obviously, where you are an applicant that is waiting for a scholarship that's going to take a few months to come to a decision on, we will obviously keep we will obviously sort of keep that place open for you once you have your offer. Other reasons to apply early are if you have specific plans around which college you might be interested in. Also, potentially, if you're moving a family here with you to Oxford and you're going to be looking for maybe sort of like a full house, a whole house kind of accommodation as opposed to sort of a room or a small flat. And if you have children that you need to find nursery or school places for, we definitely recommend applying early. The last round, we do still give out offers. However, we have operated a wait list in the last round, in the last 2 application cycles. So if possible, we do recommend that you apply in one of the first 3 rounds. So next steps. So I mentioned I'm one of the MBA recruitment managers. I am personally working with any applicants that are based across the whole of Europe. So if you are based anywhere in Europe, I can be your point of contact. I promise my voice doesn't always sound like this. And I'm also working with our applicants across Oceania or Australasia. We do also have other recruitment managers for the other parts of the world, and you can find those listed on our website. You can also send through your inquiries to MBA-recruitment at sbs.ox.ac.uk. I'm just going to pop that in the chat box for everybody so that they can see, in case you didn't see it at the beginning. Obviously, we do also have lots of information online that you can read through. Also, if you haven't already, download our brochure and you will be added to our mailing list, to our newsletters. Please do tick the box that you're happy to receive our mailings if you are. Otherwise, you won't receive any information. Obviously, we have new GDPR regulations here in Europe. And you'll receive lots of programme updates. We'll remind you of when our deadlines are. You'll hear about other webinars. And you'll also hear about events going on within your city. If you navigate again to the MBA homepage, you can navigate to events. You can also find events through the MBA page, and you'll see all the many cities that we are visiting for information events, where we're attending MBA fairs with certain organisations, where we're hosting networking sessions, etc. So if you're not sure, do have a look. There's a lot of events going on. So other things, do come and visit us. If you are in London, as I mentioned, we are an hour from London on the train. Our next open day event is coming up on the 2nd of November. So that's a full day event here in Oxford. Equally, should you like to visit campus at any other time, we do recommend that you arrange that in advance with us. We generally don't operate a walk-in, just arrive at reception procedure. So for example, I'm the only recruitment manager in the office this week. Everybody else is out on the road traveling, and I've just returned myself, hence the croaky voice. So please do arrange with us. If you come for a visit during term time, most of the time we can arrange for you to attend a live MBA class. So that could be a live MBA lecture of up to 2.5, 3 hours. So it's a great, invaluable experience. It will have a coffee break in the middle where you can network with current students. And if it's potentially at the weekend, then we can arrange for you to meet with one of our ambassadors. So we have almost 2/3 of our cohort that are signed up as recruiting and admissions ambassadors. They're happy to take you around the city, have a coffee with you. So just let us know if you have a specific requirement. And finally, just start your application. Open it up, get a sense of what is involved. We don't, judge you in any way in terms of how long you have that open for. Some people think that we're looking at how long you're completing it for. Not at all. Please do open it up and start to get a sense of what's involved. Perhaps you can start thinking about some of those questions when you're on your commute to work. So before we move on to the questions, I just leave you here with a quote from our dean. So I think, I would really sort of stress that Oxford Said is always thinking a few decades in advance. We are looking to create that next generation of leaders, people that will deal with the biggest challenge that society is facing. And we're really having a lot of discussions now around not just really how you don't have to be working in an NGO or a not-for-profit to be doing business responsibly. How are the biggest corporations in the world pursuing responsible business and being aware of the things that they should be taking responsibility for. So this is something that I would say the Dean is really, really focused on. So really looking for those individuals that will really lead with purpose as we move through the next 2 decades. So I'm going to move on to the questions. And I'm going to try and group these together. So we have a question here from somebody who's a reapplicant. So yes, we do take applications from people reapplying. Definitely know of people each year that are successful in doing this. So I've definitely seen people arrive on campus this year that have been successful in reapplying. We do have a third essay if you are reapplying, where we ask you to really cover off what has changed between your last application and your new application. And obviously, it may differ what you want to say in terms of whether you reached interview or not. So perhaps you might want to make a specific inquiry if you are reapplying as to maybe where you might need to focus in terms of your new application, just to sort of make that stronger this time around. So, somebody here who wants to visit campus, attend some lectures. So please do send through your inquiry to MBA-recruitment and we'll definitely look to get that arranged. A question of the go-to topic for 2019-2020. So sadly, this hasn't been decided yet, as we've just got started with the go-to project for this year. We usually announce that in the springtime. Obviously, the world is moving very fast these days, so we're always, thinking of that as we move through the academic year. A question around IELTS or TOEFL, so specifically for people coming from the South Asia region. Obviously, if your degree has been instructed in English, then you won't need to take the IELTS or TOEFL, but if it has not, then you will need to take the test. Okay, a great question here about the format of classes. So I mentioned an interdisciplinary approach. So the style of the classroom is very much like the UN. You obviously break into sections for the core courses where you're in groups of 80, and then for your electives, you're in smaller groups. The format, it could be case-based, we could be bringing in an external speaker, we could be bringing in an industry expert or another researcher. We could be involving a group assignment into the class. Perhaps there's an individual assignment. Perhaps there's a debate and discussion. I would say debate and discussion forms the focus of a lot of our classes. So I don't know if that hopefully answers your question. Okay, we've got some questions here about startups. So we do have quite a lot of entrepreneurs coming to the program here. So we have something called the Oxford Foundry. It started up last year. It's an incubator accelerator, and it's also a co-working space. It's something that you have access to as an alum of Oxford University as well. We just are about to approve our second cohort of startups. And that's where you would have 6 months co-working, space within the actual incubator accelerator with your startup. So there's absolutely the chance to network with the Oxford Foundry community and to potentially base your startup in Oxford post MBA. Somebody asked how that might work from a visa perspective. Obviously, beyond your potentially a tier 4 student visa, you would then be looking for a working visa. And really, I would probably divert you to our visa specialist in terms of how that might work, as a student from outside of the EU, in terms of obviously sort of starting up your new venture. Is there a preference between the GMAT and the GRE? There's no preference. GMAT, as I'm sure we all know, is a lot more popular than the GRE, but we are starting to see more and more people taking the GRE. So absolutely, we accept both and we don't prefer one over the other at all. Okay, so somebody said they felt there was a focus on consulting and finance. What about other areas? I think, from the sort of slides you can see, consulting and finance come to about, 40%. Plus that's still 60% of people working in very much other sectors, and we have a cohort that's 320 in size. So there was a question quite specific around opportunities in supply chain and manufacturing. Certainly I would urge you to look at the employment report and see the list of every single employer that people have gone on to from our 2017 cohort. Also, LinkedIn is a really good tool. If you just get on LinkedIn and you do a sort of clever search in terms of industry, and you perhaps look at Oxford MBA, or you look at Said Business School as somebody's education establishment, you'll see where our alumni are sort of going on to as well. That's a good sort of way to get a sense of where our community is working. Also, what I would say about that community, touching on alumni, is that it's not just the alumni community of the MBA. We have an executive MBA. We have a number of executive education programs here at the business school, and also you are part of the Oxonian community. So that really can translate quite powerfully post MBA into the real world, in terms of that connection might not be just with Said, it might be with somebody who has studied at the wider University of Oxford, and perhaps they studied history or economics 15 years ago. They may still be interested in your profile and interested in networking with you. Okay, somebody specifically based in a specific area looking to connect with alumni and current students, I would suggest putting your inquiry through to MBA-recruitment at sbs.ox.ac.uk. We can then forward this to the relevant MBA recruitment manager, and they can look to connect you with alumni or with current in that location, and also current students who come from your location. Okay, just sticking on GMAT here. Yes, so we do convert the GRE to a GMAT score, and we use the ETS converter. So that's the ETS converter when converting your GRE to a GMAT. So a GRE score of 161 quant, 160 verbal converts to a 650 GMAT score. So anything above that, you can then obviously work out what the relevant GMAT score would be using the ETS waiver. And a question on the 690 score. So yes, as I mentioned, you can apply with a lesser score, but obviously this is taken into the context of the rest of your application. So perhaps you might want to take some advice from the relevant MBA recruitment manager based on your profile if your score is less, and obviously taking that into account when you compare your GMAT or your GRE with your undergraduate grade. With regards to the English language requirement, you do need to meet the TOEFL or IELTS requirement. Something I have heard students say, obviously, if you are living and working in a non-English speaking country where you predominantly aren't speaking English at the moment, you will be coming to an environment where you'll be speaking English all of the time, a lot of the time, and sometimes classes will be moving quite fast. So I definitely, if you are feeling, less confident about your communication skills, and that could be quite intense for you, I would recommend in the next year seeking out every opportunity that you can to speak English, perhaps finding a language buddy and trying to socialize in English if you can. We sadly don't offer application fee waivers, so a good question here, and some people are quite worried about this. So what percentage of the seats get filled within the first 2 admission rounds? So we change our rounds every year. So last year we had September and January. This year we have September, November and January. So I would therefore say that we will be filling a smaller number of seats in September and November, because January timeline wise is always very popular with not just us but a lot of schools globally. So I would say round 3 is the biggest round. The only disadvantage of round 3 is that obviously some offers will have gone out, so there are some few less places, and some colleges and some scholarships will have been offered, but you still have every chance of getting admission if you have a good application in round 3. Is there a specific formatting template for the CV? There is a recommended template on the website, however, it's not mandatory. Moving back to English tests, no, you do not need to take an English test if you've attended college in the US. The US is automatically assumed as an English-speaking country. Sticking on the English language requirements, if you're working in an English-speaking country, it's sadly the requirement for TOEFL or IELTS does not come down to your working experience. It's down to the instruction of your degree. So either your undergraduate or your master's needs to have had some instruction in English for you to be considered for the waiver. There are a few questions on here that are quite specific that I'm going to reply to all, reply individually once we pass the 2 o'clock mark. So if your question hasn't been answered, just stay online and I'm going to reply to you individually. So okay, is a co-curricular activity mandatory? It's not mandatory, but you will definitely be participating in lots of co-curriculars. So to give you an example, perhaps you're involved in a sport, perhaps you're involved in the finance lab, and then perhaps you're running as a chair for one of our societies or as a student rep. That's an example of maybe a few things that someone might do. For the 1+1 program, where you do a master's degree and then an MBA, you can apply to more than one master's course. However, obviously, you should be mindful that there is a lot that goes into that application. The MSc application is very academic, so you should be really sort of considering that. There's a few questions here on the 1+1 program. We will be having a specific 1+1 webinar. In terms of once you reach the interview stage, there's 3 options. We will invite you here for interview for a 2-day interview experience. At that stage, you'll get to go to a college dinner, you'll get to get involved in lots of various sessions here at the business school. You'll also get invited to an admits weekend once you've been admitted, but also you can have your interview via Skype. I know there's somebody here looking for interview tips that has their interview next week, so congratulations and good luck. I'm going to share my email address at the end, and so please do email me personally. For people that are married and have children, we have a partners and families group, so please do email the inbox, and once the new committee is finalised, we'll be able to connect you with that group. Is there a specific finance fintech specialisation? There is a fintech elective that has a week trek to London every Easter, so that's definitely something worth considering. Okay, I'm just going to scroll through a couple of last questions before we finish off, and then I'm going to handle the individual questions separately. So applications are not reviewed on a rolling basis between rounds. So that does mean that you should apply probably only a few days before the deadline or even on the deadline, and your application will be reviewed after the deadline. You also can't apply for more than one application stage, just the one stage. And one final question here, do you need to get the offer letter before applying for the college? Yes, you'll have your offer letter from the business school. You need to actually pay your deposit and confirm your place before your file will be sent to the college. So it's once you've committed your that you'll be coming here to the business school that you then choose the college. So thank you very much for listening in, and I'm going to now cover off some personal questions offline with people individually. So if your question hasn't been answered, I will be replying to you individually. Thank you for joining. The session has been recorded, so we will be sending that out, and I wish you the best of luck with your next steps. I'm also going to share my email address. So if you do have a personal inquiry, please do email me. I'm not travelling for the next couple of weeks, so I am at my inbox most of the time, so I can come back to you. Again, apologies for the very croaky voice, as I'm sure you can understand. It's a hugely busy time for us here, I'm probably not at my best voice today, so I hope to meet some of you on the road. I hope to meet some of you here in person, and if your question hasn't been answered, as it's an individual question, please do stay online and I'm going to answer those now.